You're listening to the Studyclix Podcast, your number one source for junior cycle and Leaving Cert tips. We make exams easier.
Hello, and welcome back to the Studyclix Podcast. We're joining you today from the Arctic Circle. We're set on a mission to, study ice.
Study ice.
For Studyclix.
For anyone who isn't watching the video version of this podcast, Emer is wearing what I can only assume is 12 jumpers.
I actually bought it this weekend and next if anyone wants it.
I love it, it's really nice.
It's so fluffy, and I actually think it's pajamas, so sorry for anyone if that offends anyone that I'm wearing my pajamas for the podcast. But
oh, I thought it was a fleece. Fleeces are so
it looks fine, right? I could wear this in public.
Yeah, from what I can see, it looks really nice.
I'm gonna wear it in public. I just hope I don't bump into any next employees. Anyway, yes. Sorry for those not watching the video version. Yes, I'm wearing a big fluffy jumper because it's extremely cold where I am, despite the fact it's only mid-October. But hey, that's climate for you. Anyway,
this is not a climate podcast, though. This is the Studyclix podcast.
Might be eventually. Rise up. Anyway, okay. Starting with the podcast, we would like to talk this week about some common questions that you might ask surrounding the Leaving Cert. We think that obviously people have many questions around the Leaving Cert, and we're not going to be able to answer them all, but we've managed to find the most popular ones that go into Google, and we're going to try and hit those to give you more in-depth answers maybe than Google might be able to give you. This idea
came to us basically because our boss, co-founder and CEO Studyclix, Luke Saunders, shout out to Luke, the podcast's biggest fan. Represent. I remember he references this website which basically shows you can put in like a key term, something like the Leaving Cert, and it will show you like the most commonly searched questions around that term. And so he was just like, look, use this website, put in like Leaving Cert biology and see what are the kind of questions that students are asking so that we at Studyclix can be able to answer them. And it was an idea that we thought of recently for the podcast where like, let's put in Leaving Cert into this kind of super CAO or SEO engine and see what are the questions that people ask around the Leaving Cert. And I can't imagine some of the questions that I was seeing that Google was giving them very in-depth answers. So we decided we would do a podcast of us answering the most common questions we see around the Leaving Cert that have been asked on Google. Sometime doing now with the podcast, now that we're on the video podcast, but that's irrelevant, but it's in the description of these podcasts, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I've started putting in the time codes. So on the last podcast where we talked about like how to study, and we had just various different points like your study method, your study space, I put in the time codes of when we started speaking about that. So it's
that's helpful.
Good
on you.
I'm so helpful. So that's something that is going to be useful to you in your podcast listening, I hope.
Yes. So what's the first question? Let's kick us off.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot I had the list of questions. So the very first,
I do no work for this podcast. I show up.
That's okay. You bring your beautiful self.
Oh,
and your wisdom.
Very kind.
And your tangents.
I am wise.
You are so wise. Okay, so the first question on this website. So I'm seeing a lot of what subjects or what Leaving Cert subjects should I pick if I want to do such and such a course. So I'm seeing like, what should I do if I want to pick engineering? What should I pick if I want to be a teacher? And what should I pick for if I want to be medicine? So basically, what Leaving Cert subjects? This is a question that students are asking. What subjects should I be choosing if I want to do such and such a course?
Yeah, I think we looked into this in another podcast, and I think it might have been maybe the one around what subjects you should do when you're in fourth year or TY, and the answer really was that there's a very limited number of courses that have subject requirements that say, for example, you have to have chemistry or you have to have biology. It's a really, really small number in the end. It's something like, I think, less than 10 courses, or maybe like 13 or 14 courses. So I wouldn't really worry too much about getting it unless there's like a very specific course that you want and you don't want any other course and you know that. Then make sure to look up the specific course requirements for that course. Like, you're going to have to go onto the university's website, find the course in one of their prospectus. They'll probably have a web page for the prospectus, which is the thing that shows all of the different courses that they offer in that university. Go and find it, and it will have a list of the subjects needed, if there are any. But like I say, for most courses there actually aren't any requirements. There are some requirements for a certain grade, I believe, that you have to have a H1, or maybe you have to have done higher level maths. I think the main thing would be not to worry about it too much, unless you have a very specific course in mind. And if you do have a very specific course in mind, you're gonna have to go and look at the course on those university websites. But if you're really lazy and don't want to do that for some reason, I think the common answer is usually chemistry. I think chemistry is the one that tends to be, if there is ever a requirement for something like medicine or something like one of those medical related courses, I think chemistry tends to be the one that is required.
Yeah, I think basically, well, like, when you're at the stage of just picking your subjects, like Emer said, you don't need to worry too much. But when it's like coming closer to exams and you also want to know like what grades you might need, because I know some people like, oh, you might need this grade in maths if you want to do teaching or something like that. That's just kind of a general, I don't know this, but like, if you, at that stage when you're getting closer, you know the courses that you are looking at, and if you just look up the course code for, at the universities, various different ones you want to study at, that page will have all the information you need about. You just click onto, it's usually under a tab called entry requirements, and that's everything basically that you need to know if you are like a CAO applicant going through like the normal school system.
Yeah, I think generally for things like engineering, most of those courses you can just pick it up. And then maybe a follow-on question from that is, how hard is the college course if I haven't done that subject in school? And I would say, now I can't really speak from experience because I didn't do a college course that was sort of linked heavily to, well, I suppose I did apply languages and that's linked, but I suppose like I didn't not do engineering in Leaving Cert and then go and do an engineering course, so I can't really speak from experience. But I know people who have done that and they've said that it's sort of minor in terms of the additional work you have to do to get to the same place that the other students are. Like, if you chose something like engineering, having not done engineering for the Leaving Cert, if you chose it, it means you are really interested in it, and so you're probably going to pick it up quite easily if you're interested in it and want to do a bit of extra study to make sure that you are caught up with everyone else in your course. And typically something like as broad as engineering may not even have that much to do with what was covered in the Leaving Cert. So I find generally with college courses, you end up not doing a whole lot of what was in the Leaving Cert. It's like a good foundation, obviously, and helps you understand some foundational terms and concepts, but it's very different. So I think I wouldn't worry too much about having that prior knowledge going into a course.
So many people in college didn't come from secondary school, like, so they're not going to have had like come straight from that kind of an education.
Exactly. Or like mature students come back and sure they wouldn't have done the Leaving Cert in however many years and they pick it up grand. So the college courses aren't designed to be a follow on from the Leaving Cert. They're designed to be a different thing. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And just going back then to like the requirements, I think like we're saying, it's actually very few. But if you are the kind of person who really just wants to have like all grounds covered and make sure that you could potentially apply for any course that you wanted to, points allowing, try and keep with honours maths for as long as you can. If you think you'll like chemistry, probably do chemistry, because as we say, I think that's the one that tends to be the one that is required from time to time. But I've also heard that chemistry is horrible from a lot of people. So I think you have to like chemistry to want to do chemistry. So maybe keep that in mind as well. But if you're the kind of person that just wants to have all your options there, then I think chemistry is probably a good choice. Typically, like one science subject is always a good shout. One foreign language is a good shout. But I think that's required anyway. Try and do all the higher levels for as long as you can, unless it's really like hindering the rest of your study. If, like, as I say, if you are the kind of person that wants to make sure that you have all the options for all the college courses for as long as you can, until you know the exact course that you want to do, and then you can sort of be more specific about what you need from your subjects. But yeah, if you're trying to keep it really wide and general at the beginning, just try and stick with higher level everything as long as you can, and keep your subjects very varied.
Random anecdote for me. For my course, actually, one of the only entry requirement is that you needed either a D in ordinary maths, a D in higher maths, or a B in ordinary maths. And that was actually one of my motivations for keeping on higher maths, even though I was so tempted to pass for a lot of sixth year, because for some reason I thought it was more likely that I would just get above a D in higher than I would a B in ordinary. Like, I wasn't confident I could actually get a B in ordinary if I passed. And then there ended up being just one class in maths in first year of my course. Like, I was like, really? Like, was that necessary?
Yeah,
but anyway.
it's very annoying. Yeah, and I also even think there are probably ways around it. I don't want to speak too much on this because I don't know for sure. I think we should give a shout out to Leaving Cert Guidance on Instagram, our good friend
Good
Donica.
time to shout out Donica, who we love.
I don't want to say anything false, so if you like are really considering, or if this is really important to you and you need to know more about this, I would go maybe send him a DM. Sorry, Donica, if you don't like getting DMs or sending them your way.
But the amount of people around CAO time that I tell to message Donica, like, he must be so annoying.
Sorry, Donica.
It's like, I can't answer this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but what was I going to say? I forget.
That's okay. I think we spoke a lot about that subject, or about that. We only answered one question. We're like, we're like an hour into the podcast already.
Moving on.
Moving on. The next one is, what Leaving Cert subjects should I pick? This is
okay. We just answered that essentially.
I think we have a whole podcast already on how to choose your subjects. Oh wait,
you're right, and we do go into so have a look at that one, because we go into detail about how it's important to not pick things for a certain reason.
I'll go stop you there. I don't think we recorded a podcast on choosing your subjects.
Really?
Yeah,
maybe we didn't. Maybe we'll do a separate podcast. Okay, well, we've got a blog, and then maybe there's a podcast coming soon. We need a podcast manager, someone who could like stand in the corner and tell us these things. Anyway,
that should be one of us, but yeah.
So go look at the blog that we have on how to choose your subjects. We go into detail about things that you should and shouldn't do when making these choices. For example, don't just do the subject that your friends are doing. Don't just do something because maybe you've been influenced by a family member to something to do it. Do things for your own sake. If you really like a subject, you should do it. Take things like your college course into consideration. Take your results so far in those subjects into consideration. If you're good at something, then you'll probably find it easier, and it's always good to have a couple of subjects that come easily to you in the Leaving Cert to help you study the harder ones, or give you more time, I guess. Anything else on that, Nessa?
It's just like there's only the two main factors that I say to consider, and I give this advice for both choosing your college course and for choosing your subjects in school. The two number one things you should consider is, one, what you like, and two, what you're good at. And there's also like lots of other things, like get input from family and friends, research, ask other people who've already in the subject what they feel about it. But those, I think, should be the main two things you can consider, because if you have a genuine interest in the subject and you find your kind of, not that you have a natural ability, but you just find that you get on well with it, that's just going to be an easier time for you with that subject. So
yeah, if you could re-choose your Leaving Cert subjects, what would you do?
100% history. I know people say history is not great for the Leaving Cert. I'll see history tutor on Instagram. I've done I did a Instagram live with him in the past, and he is very, very passionate about history, but he doesn't actually, and he himself is a history teacher, but he doesn't like how it's taught. He's saying it's like way too content heavy. The exam puts way too much pressure on students. Like, you have to write something like,
that's an insane amount of essays.
A crazy amount of essays. Yeah. Like, just not, I mean, so like, I would have hated the exam, but I only started learning about history like after school, because I think I was put off by how much content was in it. In a way, I guess I don't regret it, but I do wish I kept on history. Like, I didn't even do it for the junior cert. If I at least done it for the junior cert, I might have
See, I think our school's unusual in that sense, because I've heard from many other people in the meantime who didn't go to our school, and they say that geography and history are mandatory up until the junior cert, which it wasn't for either of us.
That's
So
mad.
I'm just like, what's a volcano? I have no idea.
I have no idea. I hated geography. The stuff I was just like, why isn't geography like just like learning the capitals of the places and
I know. We were lied to for so
yeah.
many years about what geography is. Yeah, no, so you do history, what else?
I'm pretty happy enough with the rest of my choices. I enjoyed home ec, I enjoyed biology, and I enjoyed accounting. I wouldn't do music, but that's just because I took that on as an extra subject without needing to. Um, but yeah, and we did have a choice in our languages. We had to do French, but French is pretty cool. What about you?
So I did French, biology, home ec, DCG.
Oh yeah, it's really random that you did DCG.
So random, but it was the same with my junior cert subjects. Like I didn't choose based on anything logical. I did woodwork and I did
I did junior cert subjects based on what my friends are doing. Yeah, not great.
Well, I based it on what I liked, and I liked woodwork or whatever. So, but I definitely, obviously, I wasn't planning on becoming well, not obviously, but I wasn't planning on becoming a carpenter. But I just thought it was fun. I really enjoyed it, which I think was a good, as you say, that's a good reason to do it. But I loved DCG. I would definitely do DCG again, even though I don't use it at all in my day-to-day life. I liked home ec. I'm glad I did home ec. I think home ec serves me a lot to this day. I'm constantly being like, oh, need my 40 to 65 micrograms of vitamin C today.
It's the only, like, I know what all the washing labels mean, and that is because of home ec. I feel like it's the only Leaving Cert subjects that the information actually, like, stuck to me.
It's like, oh, better go claim my small claims court tax for less than €2,000 claims. I'll never forget these pieces of information.
I heard the story on the radio today or was it yesterday? Yeah, whatever. I heard a story on the radio that was this woman who found this cardigan that was like €60 marked down to 30, and she went up to pay for it, and she says like, oh, and your one scanned it as €60, and she's like, no, it's 30, and your one's like, oh no, this was a mistake because this is a new item, so it is 60, and your one was like, well, I know my consumer rights, and because you displayed this as a sale item, you legally have to sell it to me at €30. And your one got the manager over, and the manager was like, yeah, that is actually her consumer right. I was like, you learned that in home ec.
Yeah.
You learned it in business too, as far as I know, but I was like,
sick own. Imagine she must have been on a high for the rest of the day.
Like, that would keep me going all year. Fair play to that woman.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I wouldn't do biology. I think I chose biology because of that thing that everyone says you should do at least one science subject. I guess it's kind of useful that I sort of have an idea of what my insides are doing, but yeah, maybe. I think I'm with you. I kind of wish I'd done history or geography.
Yeah. I think it's because like we went to a tech, so that didn't really that was for the people who are like good at like manual labor. That's not really it, but like I was not good at woodwork or engineering, all of these subjects that we were fortunate to have, but I was not naturally gifted at any of those, and I probably would have benefited better from something like history. But anyway, that's that. Let's get back to the questions. Back to the list of people are asking. There is some funny things on here as well, because like I am trying to kind of summarize kind of repeated stuff I see, but then there's stuff that I see is like the question is just, what is Leaving Cert? Like, you and me both, brother. What is a good Leaving Cert, Emer? Putting you on the spot with that one.
Oh, that is totally up to you and your own goals and benchmarks. I don't even want to say a number because it's completely up to you and what you want to achieve, and a lower number, and like lower is obviously just like actually low because the scale goes from 0 to 625, but like a lower number could be perfectly fine if you have like learning disabilities, and it's actually really great that you're able to sit exams at all, because obviously, I mean, we won't get too philosophical about it, but the whole system is not very fair to every student. It doesn't cater to every student and every learning type and every brain that's out there. So there's no such thing as a good Leaving Cert score. I think obviously everyone thinks that 625 is a great score, and it is a great score for those who work really hard and really want to get that, and that's what they want to achieve. And this is what I'm saying, like, it's totally up to you. But just because the majority of people think that 65 is the best doesn't necessarily mean it is. It's totally subjective to you and your goals. So be proud of whatever you achieve. If you feel like you've put the work into it, that's good. It should be good enough for you if that's what you have wanted to achieve. It doesn't matter what the number is.
I have another good anecdote, actually.
Oh, hit us.
So I going back to my first year of college, just like September, only a few months after doing the Leaving Cert, still on that high because I got over 500 points and I was really proud of myself. And I met like my housemate. Not sure if anonymity is important on the Studyclix podcast. She lives in Australia and she's definitely not listening.
Well, I think first names are fine.
My housemate Sinead has this incredible story of how she got something like, she didn't work in her mock, she didn't put in any effort, and she got something like 200 points. And when she got the results, she was thinking, oh God, I actually want to get such and such a course in UL. I need to get my act together. And she went up to 400 points in her final Leaving Cert. And I think her, like, getting her act together and like putting all the work in, even though she got less points than me, I think that is way more impressive than my Leaving Cert score. So I kind of like don't know how to explain it, but and our principal actually loved this because it was the what you call the slogan of our school.
Oh yeah,
do your best. And like, he was a big kind of believer in that he didn't want to celebrate the people who were getting the 625s the most. He was celebrating the biggest improvements and people who were it's more impressive that you do if you do well for yourself. Or how am I trying to say it? But like, it's just it's putting the work in and improving and doing your absolute best. That is a good Leaving Cert.
And I think the big challenge there is not so much finding that out for you or trying to stick to that yourself. It's about trying to challenge everyone else's perspective on it, because I know that there are a lot of people that don't maybe see it the way that we see it, or see it the way that our principal saw it, and don't necessarily value the journey as much as the final score. You maybe have people in your life who are putting pressure on you to get a certain number and put value on a higher number. So the challenge there is to not care about that as much and try again, like we're saying, do it for you. Set your own goal and be happy with yourself if you reach that goal, and try not to let others' opinions of what's good and bad get to you. It's try and set your goal to be realistic to what course you want to get into. Otherwise you will set yourself up for disappointment. It's kind of hard to be proud of a certain number if that then doesn't serve you the thing that you want to get out of it. So maybe just adjust your outcomes accordingly as well, to make sure that you can be happy and proud of whatever those final points are.
That sounds good. I'm looking at some more questions, because there's other kind of loaded ones like that, like, does Leaving Cert matter?
We're really getting into it today.
And
should we answer that?
I mean, yeah, sure, why not? I feel like this is the kind of question that, like, it comes out around Leaving Cert results. It's like on the eve of results comes out, and it's like
every 30-year-old on Twitter comes out.
It's everyone over the age of 30 is just like, so they're Leaving Cert results tomorrow. Back in 2000 and whatever, when I opened my results, I was so sad. But now today I have 7 businesses. I'm one of the happy pair twins. I'm like,
I'm Blind Boy from the Blind Boy podcast. And in fairness, they're all like good stories. We're making fun of the fact that it's extremely cliche and many people do it, but it's not to take away from the fact that they all are making good points about this question. Is the Leaving Cert important? And of course it is, to a certain extent. We're not going to say that, just don't even bother with the Leaving Cert, because because for many people it is important, and for those of you who are listening who take the Leaving Cert very seriously and really want to do extremely well, yeah, that's extremely valid, and the Leaving Cert is obviously important for you as someone who values a high mark in the Leaving Cert and getting the course that you want through getting those high marks. But if you're someone who isn't as maybe driven to go and further your academic career, or someone who doesn't place as much value on these kind of things, and you would rather finish the Leaving Cert and go off and do a PLC or an apprenticeship, or go traveling for a small bit and maybe find other career opportunities that way, and you're just not as bothered about following the traditional route of going straight into third level, then that is also extremely valid, and you will definitely also succeed in that route if you don't follow the same route, like all of these people on Twitter, like Blind Boy. You can not get on very well in the Leaving Cert and still succeed very much in life. Equally, you can get on really well in the Leaving Cert and not succeed in life. It's a hard truth coming at you at 4:00 on a Tuesday. But unfortunately, that is possible. You might, end up hating your course and then feeling really lost. Like, I'm not trying to be like pessimistic. This is just a realistic thing that might have to happen to some people, and it's worth being aware of it. So, yeah, getting 65 points doesn't equal like eternal happiness, and getting 200 points doesn't equal eternal sadness. It sort of just ties into what we were saying. Like, it's all about your own goals and your own happiness and what you want to achieve out of your own life. And it's really hard to think about what you want to achieve out of your own life when you're 17, 18 years of age. So big respect to those of you who are having to try and think of that at the moment. But I suppose the overall advice is to try and not overthink it, and as much as you can, maybe follow intuition and just see what feels right to you. If you really think you want to go and do college and enjoy it, and there's a course that's really calling to you, then yes, the Leaving Cert is important, and go get those points that you need to do it. If you're not really feeling that much into it and think, actually, I really think that like going to Australia is for me, then maybe you need to follow that thought a little bit more.
Yeah. I think, to touch on something you said there, it's really hard to see it like that way when you're like 17, 18, and like going to school has been the majority of your life. Like you spend Monday to Friday in school, and you don't have any kind of idea of like the working world. It's hard for you to picture a future like after exams where you might have had like up and down with your career. Like, you can't see that because you're still in school. And I'm coming in hot with another anecdote.
You are firing out the anecdotes.
I'm firing out the anecdotes today. But I did this really cool thing actually when I was 16. I might have actually mentioned this on another podcast. So I was in TY. Mom gave me a book called Letters to My 16-Year-Old Self, and she got all like these and it was just a bunch of these celebrities had been asked to write. They were all like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they just like wrote letters to their 16-year-old selves and like giving advice what you should do and all this kind of a thing. So she gave this to me on my 16th birthday, and she's like, it's an advice for a 16-year-old. And I was like, oh, this is cute. And then I was like, what if I write a letter to myself now as a 16-year-old self in the future? And then they can write a letter to me, but their 16-year-old writes back. Like, I thought it was a cool concept.
It's a very you concept.
Yeah, I wrote lots of letters. I wrote one to be read 30 years in the future when I was 36. And then I realised that was too far away. I couldn't wait for that. So I actually wrote one to my 21-year-old self. I am over the age of 21, so I have had that letter. On my like 21st birthday, I was like, oh my god, my 16-year-old self wrote a letter to me. I must open it. When I tell you, I was so disappointed with the 90, if not more, 90% of it, just about the Leaving Cert, like heavy detail on like each of my subjects and what I'm doing, and I'm like, I as like someone who this is long behind me. I'm in college now. I live in another country. Like, I moved to like London at some stage. I was just like, this is just so uninteresting to me. Like, I don't care. Like, I've already done this. I've already lived it. Like, I kind of want, what do you do on the weekends? Talk about your friends.
Yeah.
And I was just like, so yeah, it's hard. to be a 17, 18-year-old and pitch your life after the Leaving Cert, but I suppose it's just do your best every now and again when you're kind of thinking about, oh, the Leaving Cert doesn't matter, like, or I need to get really good results to get this. It's just like try really hard to zoom out and look at the big picture as best as you can, because your life will be so different when you're out of school.
Yeah, this is possibly a separate point, but I know it's especially hard because not only you make your whole life about the Leaving Cert, but everyone around you also makes your life about the Leaving Cert. Like, you remember when you'd be in sixth year and you'd go to that, like a communion of your cousins or something, and everyone there, all they ask you about is how's school and how's the Leaving Cert and what do you want to do, and so it's almost like no one like, ask me something else, ask me about my hobbies, ask me about, I don't want to be talking about the Leaving Cert, because everyone talks to you about the Leaving Cert, and even within your group of friends you're probably always talking about the Leaving Cert or school or homework or something like that. So I guess it's important to be aware of that and try to make sure that you are keeping up with other hobbies and things that aren't at all related to the Leaving Cert for your own sake, but also so that you have something else to talk about with people, to also remind them that it's not just that you're not just doing the Leaving Cert and that's your whole life.
Okay, I have a less rambly question, I guess. Something with more kind of facts in it. So it's points came up a lot when I put in the keyword Leaving Cert into like what stuff is Googled the most when it comes to Leaving Cert, and it's like, will Leaving Cert points go up and down and blah 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 year or blah blah course or all this kind of a thing. So I feel like a good explanation on how Leaving Cert points work could be good, because it is thanks to our friend Donica, who we shouted out earlier on the podcast.
We should have just got Donica on this podcast.
I know, he would have been a fountain of knowledge. But yeah, I think explain the point system and like asking if you knew how it worked, you wouldn't be typing into Google, will points go up for this course, because you would know that it's actually so hard to predict, and it's impossible to predict, in fact. So the way that the point system works is that, say you have this course, let's call it how to be a Pokemon trainer in UCC, is 400 points.
Why did you pick that course?
Because I was just like, if I pick nursing, I might just confuse someone.
Okay.
So how to be a Pokemon trainer in UCC.
You said it so fluidly, as if this is like a thing you've been thinking about for a while. Is this your dream course?
No, I literally just thought that off the top of my head. I was going to say something about Hogwarts or something instead, but it was going to be fictional.
Okay. I love it.
I didn't actually say points. Say that there's this course in UCC, Pokemon related, and there are 50 places on this course. So it's 50 spaces. The first person who's going to take the place on that course is the person who got the highest points, who has that number one on their course. So say someone got 625 points, they will take the number one top spot on that course. Say there is someone who, I don't know off the top of my head what different numbers what possible numbers make up the course points, but say there's someone who got 620 points, they take the second spot in that course, and it keeps going all the way down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 47, 48, 49. Say 50 is the last person to get into that course, who takes the 50th spot. They got something like 400 points. That is how 400 points is the cutoff, and that means it is 400 points to get into how to be a Pokemon trainer in UCC. And that is how they calculate the points, and that is how it's so impossible to tell, because it depends on the Leaving Cert grades and who applied for those courses in a certain year, and that changes every year, and there's new courses being added every year. So that is why it is so hard to predict. They don't pull for the numbers for the points, like they don't pull these random figures out of the air. It's actually based on demand, pretty much. That sums up that point.
I never knew that. I learned something new today.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So my explanation was actually not that confusing. Well, that's great.
Makes sense.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. So that's how the point system works, basically. There is one weird thing that I actually only learned last year when I was doing the CAO thing, and it's kind of like, I'm not sure if it's something they're going to change, because it seems deeply unfair, but it's their lottery system. And say like there's like the 50th place, and is like the person got 400 points, but then there's all these other people who applied and they also got 400 points, but there's only one more place. They just have to do a lottery and pick one person at random.
It's
terrible. So it's terrible. I'm like, is that like, did you all have a meeting and that was the best way to do it? But yeah, when it comes to the CAO, just to keep that in mind, that's how they do it. But hopefully, you listen to this won't have to deal with that, because it's very unfortunate. But yeah, that's how the points work.
Next question.
Emer, would you like to answer a question that I have been told what it means, and I should know what this means as someone who works at Leaving Cert, who's someone who works at Studyclix, but I'm not fully sure what it means. So what is Leaving Cert Applied?
It's a different version of exams, or it's a different type of exams. It's for people who don't go through the normal Leaving Cert system, so it's a different collection of subjects. I think they tend to be more geared towards people who would then go on to do PLCs or apprenticeships, so they're not the standard biology, geography and so on. They're more geared towards careers and specific sectors of the working world, I believe.
Oh, that's interesting. For some reason, I had back in my head that had something to do with applied maths. It was nothing to do with applied maths. Applied maths is a subject.
No, I think the applied refers to applying certain skills to the working world. So yeah, there is like some overlap. Some of the subjects are quite similar. I think there's Englishy subjects in LCA. You could do music in LCA. You could do modern languages in LCA. But the courses are structured differently. I think they are more geared towards getting you into the workforce, as opposed to maybe getting you into third level education. That's not to say that you can't get into third level education. Obviously, there are ways to get into third level education regardless of your prior education. But that is my understanding of LCA. I don't want to... I also don't know that much of it, unfortunately. I'm not a major expert, but that is my understanding of it. If you are interested in LCA and doing the LCA subjects, I would maybe inquire around your school. Your principal or secretary or maybe vice principal would be able to give you more information, or even a guidance counsellor. And there might be a school nearby or some educational centre nearby that could help you do that instead of the Leaving Cert, if you're finding the Leaving Cert and its sort of conventional way of learning and curriculi. What's the plural of curricula? Curricula.
I didn't know that.
Curricula.
Every day's a school day.
Anyway, yeah.
Very good.
I don't want to give too much information on that because I am into an expert either, but that is my understanding of LCA.
It's very good. I think, that's the kind of nice answer that you wouldn't get from a Google page. So that was good.
Yeah. Better than the robots. Even though we are a robot.
He's our whole brand, yeah.
We technically are one giant blue robot.
We aren't real.
Imagine if the Studyclix office looked like a giant robot.
Oh my god.
And we all had like
so cool.
You worked in the antenna and I worked in his claw arm or something.
And the circle or like the sphere on top of the antenna like rotated like that restaurant in Seattle.
That'd be our canteen. Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen.
At Luke Saunders. Where's our Studyclix office? Okay.
Imagine it just on the keys, like in Dublin City.
Alongside it would show up as a question in DCG in 10 years' time. Like, draw this building. That always happens. Literally every building in Dublin. If you don't know DCG, this won't make sense to you. But if you do know DCG, every building in Dublin has appeared on one of the Leaving Cert questions in DCG, and you have to draw it. Anyway. Moving on.
What a tangent. One of our weirder tangents. Yeah, I think there was like one last one. I was just like looking at some of these questions. I don't know, are these actually the questions asked, or like are they just like typos and stuff? Because I see one is just like, what year is Leaving Cert? And I love that. Imagine it was just 1 year and it never happened again. Or like when does the Leaving Cert end? Like that was probably just put in 1 year and they were looking for the timetable, but it's just like, when does it end? Oh my god. Okay, I've one last question, and it's another loaded one.
I
Okay.
love a loaded question.
Is Leaving Cert hard?
Well, yes, it is hard, but it's easy for some people. If rote learning is a breeze to you, then yes, the Leaving Cert isn't that hard. If you have learning difficulties, yes, the Leaving Cert is extremely hard because it's not made for you, unfortunately. It's not meant to test the things that come more naturally to you in the world of intellect. So I think, well, okay, the short answer is yes. For every single person, the Leaving Cert is hard, even if you're really good at rote learning, because there's some amount of effort that has to go into it, even if you get on really well and studying comes easy to you. It's still hard. You still have to put in a lot of time and effort. So yes, it is. But it can be made easier in a couple of ways. For example, finding the right way of studying and saving time that way, making sure you get a head start on the study, don't leave it till the last minute, being really organized, making sure that you keep lots of planners and to-do lists, reducing distractions in your life, not going on social media too often. Anything else?
Well, I was just going to kind of come back to that point of like, is Leaving Cert hard? And it's kind of, I remember seeing something when I was in 6th year, and it was just like, I think it was like a magazine article about like the Leaving Cert. I remember the statement being said that like the Leaving Cert isn't even going to be the hardest exam you'll ever do. There's loads of exams you'll do in college that are, if you go on to do a course in college, that are going to be so much harder. And I remember that sentence freaking me out, because I was like, you mean it gets worse? It gets worse than this? But like, I think the Leaving Cert is hard in the way that it is such a wide variety of subjects, and it's the content load that is hard. You're expected, you feel this pressure to do as well as you can across very different, like English is so different to chemistry, or like maths is so different to history, and that like you're going to have strengths and weaknesses and all these kind of things, but you feel this pressure to kind of study all of them at once. And I think that aspect of the Leaving Cert is very hard. Sure, you'll go on to do college at the exams, if you do like maybe a science kind of a course, the content gets a lot more complicated and the exam is per se harder. But I think the workload and kind of the variety of subjects you kind of have to cover, that's what makes the Leaving Cert quite hard. And like you said, how it doesn't cater to all learning types.
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors that's making the Leaving Cert hard. And as you say, when you go to college, you might have a really hard exam or a really hard assignment, but it's partnered with you being in college and having a good time, and also doing this project or assignment or something in a course that you hopefully most likely want to be doing and are enjoying doing, and you at least then feel like, right, this is hard, but it's also interesting to me and I need to know why this works and I need to know how to get the best outcome out of the assignment because it's important to my course and my learning and like my eventual career that might come out of this course. So whereas it can be really hard in the Leaving Cert when you're there trying to grasp the ins and outs of the Krebs cycle in biology, and you know that you will have absolutely no use for this, that's a lot harder, I find. Like, obviously for Studyclix I have to look at different things that we're creating in all the different subjects, and we have these great biology videos coming soon, and the detail that students have to go into for biology is insane. And so hard. It's like, this is so complex, such a complex idea that you're having to try and grasp at the age of 17 or 18.
The Krebs cycle still has you by the neck.
I couldn't even try to explain it to you other than the fact that it's in a cycle. Like, what is going on? ATP? Anyway, right. But no, it's like it I didn't really realize at the time because I was just like, right, this is information, I have to study it, I have to remember it, that's it. I just got on with it. But now reflecting in my age and wisdom, I'm just sort of shocked at some of the detail that we had to go into and the complexity of some of the subjects. And with the knowledge of like the stuff that some of the stuff that's on the biology course, if you were just studying biology on its own, would be quite difficult. And then, as you say, you take into account that there are also 6 or 7 other subjects that you're doing alongside that, and going into the same level of detail and complexity in other completely other fields. Like, it's not even like, oh well, chemistry kind of overlaps or anything like that. It's like, well, I'm doing Krebs cycle for this 40-minute time period, and then I have to go straight into like doing out a budget for Timecodes.
It's crazy actually when you think about it.
Yeah, so good on you. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy the expectations of Leaving Cert students, and you don't realize when you're in it because you just accept it because you don't know anything else. But let us tell you, it is a serious feat what you all are doing, regardless of whether you're doing it pretty well or struggling. It's like it's serious work that you're doing. Yeah,
you will never have to do that again once after Leaving Cert. You will.
It's not. I think the Leaving Cert is the hardest. It's the most taxing, maybe, undertaking, academic undertaking, unless you do a PhD. I've heard awful things about PhDs. I think maybe PhD students might say that they'd rather do the Leaving Cert, but yeah, I don't have experience in that, thankfully, yet. So yeah,
Leaving Cert. I think we answered, is Leaving Cert hard, quite well. Yeah, I think those are all the questions I have, and I think we should wrap it up there because it has we have gone on for long enough already.
Gone be with the days where we used to finish podcasts within 25 minutes.
I was listening back on one of our podcasts because I wanted to just make new sound bites and stuff, and I was just like, I couldn't get over it when it was finished in 15 minutes. I was like, who are these people? Can we get them back? I want to be that girl again.
We've just learned how to ramble so well. Anyway.
Yeah. This is our second video podcast now, Emer. How do you feel?
Self-conscious.
When I was just like editing it and then putting it to YouTube, I was like, I was not taking into account that my face is going to be on camera the entire time we record this, and like it's so like obvious. Like I keep like touching my face. I keep like I'm so embarrassed. There's like points where it's just like it like I'm blatantly just not paying attention to you, and it's so obvious. Like I'm completely zoning out.
I think that's fine though, because people, I think by default, will look at the person who's speaking. So when I'm speaking, they would maybe look at me, and when you're speaking, they look at you.
Yeah,
that's what I hope as well, because I definitely do the same thing. Or like, I'm just like, okay, I'm not saying anything, I'm not moving my hands, so I'm just sitting there, but I need to like look like I'm like nodding along or whatever.
Yeah, or, the whole thing of like when you're FaceTiming or Zooming, you can't help but look at yourself.
Oh yeah, I never look at the other person. I am extremely vain.
So it's just like I was trying to make a conscious effort to look at you during that, and I was just like, it's definitely, you can just definitely notice my eyes just flicker back to myself.
We all do it.
It's
fine.
Okay, that is the Studyclix podcast for another day. Thank you so much for listening. I see the stats. There are dozens of you, dozens.
If anyone gets the Arrested Development reference there, please get in touch. We want to be your friend.
Dozens is accurate, but I appreciate all of you, and if you could recommend us to a friend, we'd really appreciate that. Leave a 5-star review, because those are the ones that help us get recognized and make us look really good. A written review would make us cry, because it has in the past. We really appreciate it. If you have any ideas for the podcast, please let us know. We are very easy to contact. Our customer service by email, info@studyclix.ie, or on the chat box on the Studyclix website. You can also message us through any of the social media platforms, which I run. Studyclix, all the social media platforms. Just search Studyclix, you'll find us there. You can message us on all of them except TikTok, as far as I'm aware. I'd go with Instagram if you have Instagram. So yeah. Anything else, Emer?
No, you.
I was determined to cover all of those.
You did great.
Bye for another day, I guess.
Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.